Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And wanted to do this lesson. I was reading through a few articles. There was one that I read where basically there was I think this lady, and a few others that were facing decades in prison because of basically protesting. They were anti abortion protesters, but because of their obstruction, as they called it, of people's rights, where it would like be in the front of these abortion clinics, abortion centers, and then trying to convince people not to do it. They ended up behind bars. Okay. And, on the flip side, you also have now, these so-called mainstream media sites are pushing for the abolishment of disinformation, which, if you are not aware by now, disinformation is code word for alternative news or alternative source of information. What that means is the mainstream media, or the MSM, for a long time was set to be the main, once again, stream of media, of getting information. And the thing about the mainstream media is it was set up by those that pretty much control what people see, because, perception, deception, right? People believe what they perceive. And so if you can control their perception, you can control what they believe. Hence, during the whole, the whole CV, right, the whole situation that happened, that the world shut down, the demic and all of that, it wasn't until people started actually going out and recording what these hospitals look like that, others started to question, because they would see on the mainstream, on the MSM, that, hospitals are flooded and X, Y, and Z is no space. And then they would turn around and see people putting up videos on like Rumble or Odyssey or even YouTube of just walking into hospitals and it's empty. And they're like, yeah, I'm in this city where they're saying this, that, and the third, and I'm showing you what is actually happening here. So that started to become a problem. And when you actually read there was I don't want to call it a synopsis, but it was like sort of like a postmortem, of this whole situation. One of their main talking points on that was controlling information. And so the whole propaganda and the whole narrative of disinformation is stemming from the fact that it's hard now to control the perception of the masses, because they are now distrusting the main avenue, which is the mainstream media. Now people are starting to say, no, that's biased. No, there's this, because there's a lot of information coming out through the internet. Hence, now they're pushing for internet regulation policies. They're pushing for, basically being able to censor the internet as they would be able to do for mainstream media platforms, which they own those anyway. Okay, but the problem is nobody owns the internet. And that's where the problem arises for a lot of these, these different governments. Okay, and that's why also whenever there's like a pretty major crisis in some of these countries, they'll actually be able to shut down what they call like shut down the internet. All right, and that's to control the information leaving and entering the country. Okay, but the point in all this is to say that you can see the gradual shift towards a world or a society where you're not allowed to speak freely. You're not that whole concept of freedom of speech or even freedom of thought. Okay, if you're not familiar, you should take a look at George Orwell's 1984. And within that book, which there was also a movie adaptation to that, they have the concept of the thought police. Okay, and as a matter of fact, let me do something real briefly. Let's see what happens if we look up thought police. And it's as the name says. All right. Okay. So here it says thought police, a group of people, and this is from Google, who aim to, or a group of people who aim or are seen as aiming to suppress ideas that deviate from the way of thinking that they believe to be correct. So, I mean, pretty obvious that only those who would be in a position of power or authority could really play the role of a thought police, because just a regular individual can't really suppress the ideas of others unless they have influence and power to do so. And as a matter of fact, in George Orwell's 1984, at least from the movie, the way they were doing it was because they actually had torture mechanisms and all of that to keep society believing a certain narrative and to control the way people think. So you're not allowed to have, to freely think. If they ask you what is 2 plus 2 and you say 4, you get hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like, they torture your ass. And then they ask you again, what is 2 plus 2? If you say 3, they torture your ass. Okay. And they're going to keep on torturing you until you break. Okay. Which, as they showed in the movie, pretty much the example is, what is 2 plus 2? Your answer is really supposed to be, you don't know. Like, they got it. 2 plus 2 is whatever they tell you 2 plus 2 is. And, as crazy as that seems, shock a man enough times and they'll they'll get with the program. You'll be able to reprogram their minds, to believe 2 plus 2 is 11 or 22. But that's sort of like the direction you're seeing things going in, right? Where they have this whole cancel culture. They have this whole, like, they've bitched out society, for lack of a better word, to where everybody's in their feelings, and they push it as though this is something that's for the betterment or for equity or equality, and it's really not. It's really not, because I'm gonna get a quick precept in a second, but I got to get this out, which is, how is it that you can look back? I implore you to look back at certain comedy TV shows that came out like decades ago, and just sit down and watch a couple of episodes from there. And even show like Everybody Hates Chris, right? You had Chris Rock as a narrator, South Park, The Boondocks. You watch these kinds of shows, you might find yourself a little surprised and wonder, wow, this is crazy that they allowed this to air on TV. And then you may catch yourself and wonder, why is it crazy? Because decades ago when you watched it, it was fine. But now, because everything is PC and everything is everybody is so sensitive to everything, now you can't speak 2 sentences without somebody looking at why do you say that? What do you mean by that? And that's how they basically police your thoughts, because they want you to think a certain kind of way. Now, something that you would normally, the way you would normally speak, here it is. It was never a problem to speak with pronouns up until this time, up until the last X amount of years. All you mean to tell me that in all different languages, different cultures, over the different centuries, they all understood the use of pronouns. He, she, him, her. And all of a sudden, it's a problem now. So now here it is, depending on your environment, before you speak, you got to stop. Oh, shit. They, that, persons. It's no longer breastfeeding, it's chest feeding. If that sounds normal to you, then, hey, that just proves the point all the more. Now, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 29, verse 21. That's actually, let me see. Let me go up a bit. All right, this is the book of Isaiah 29 and 18. It says, "And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness." Now, what is that ultimate book? The words of the scriptures. Okay, now the deaf is not necessarily talking about the literal people, literal deaf. Okay, but you know, being deaf spiritually to not understand these words. But really, what the Lord is saying is He's gonna open up our minds and our hearts that we can understand and receive the words in the book. Okay, hence bringing out the true understanding of it. Okay, verse 19, "The meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel." Okay, and that starts with the elect. Okay, so verse 20, "For the terrible one is brought to naught." So who is the ultimate terrible one? Esau, Edom. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you why they're terrible. Look at the world today. When you everything wrong with the world today, when you look at it, you look at Esau, because because not it's not like so it's not like these devils, these elites, these people in power are just that bad at management that things just got out of hand under their under their control. They deliberately made it that way. That's the that's the worst part. It's not like, oh, you just you're just bad at taking care of things. No, you deliberately are destroying the world. Okay, so they are the terrible one. But as it says, "For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off." And that's going to happen when the Lord brings judgment upon this place, because the judgment is going to be against the ungodly. Okay, and it's going to, through that judgment, righteousness is going to come into the earth again. And in order for that to happen, the terrible ones need to be brought to naught. Verse 21, "That make a man," this is the point, "an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just thing for a thing of naught." Now, on a light example, on a light note, the gate is like the opening, okay, the pathway. And one example is, like it says, "Lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate." Now, you had these people that but you should understand, in this society, you don't have power to do that, so you want to use wisdom. But anyway, they went and they were blocking the entrances of these abortion clinics to try and stop people from going to, do these things, which the scriptures are against it, right? So in essence, they were trying to reprove these people, like I said, as a light example. But the snare was that there were laws on the books against that, to where now they facing time in jail, right? But the point is here, they make a man an offender for a word. So speaking, and what word? Ultimately is the words of the Heavenly Father, because this society is not built on following the principles and the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Bible, which it's very ironic that they swear their presidents in the inauguration on the Bible and then turn around and enact laws that go against the Bible. So that tells you something about them, right? Anyway, you speak the right thing and you're ostracized. But what they're trying to go for is they're realizing that just criticizing somebody alone is not enough. Just trying to, they're losing the information war, right? They're losing the info wars. So they need to take it a step further by demonizing the truth to a point where they can now deem it dangerous. And once they can push it into the territory of dangerous, they can go further than saying, this is now gone from an information warfare to a physical war, where now we can take action by either, enacting laws against you for speaking these things, to actually put you in jail, or to, categorize you in label you a certain way to where you can face, judicial punishment or whatever. Okay. As it says here, "And lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just thing for a thing of naught." And that's what they're trying to do. Okay. And so they need to find a way to try and eliminate those that are speaking up against that. And that's why they're pushing so much for this whole, they're talking about disinformation. First off, the biggest people that push disinformation is them. And what people are starting to find out is all the things that he called conspiracy theories are now coming true before their eyes. So I'm going to end it off on this note, because regardless of what the facts are, regardless of what the truth actually is, because it's the will of the Lord, they will prevail in causing the words, this truth to cease. In terms of the information, the access to this information is going to cease. Okay, but that's only going to be possible because it is the will of the Lord. Now, this is the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 11. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land. How is the Lord going to do that? He's going to do it using Esau, Edom, using those that have the ability to cause this famine. Obviously, like it says, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. Okay, so there's going to be a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. How do you hear the words of the Lord? Via these videos and the lessons that we do. So how are they going to cause a famine, a stoppage of you hearing that? Well, you hear it through the internet. You hear it through these videos and the different platforms. But eventually, when they start to make it a problem, they start to put obstacles in the way, it's going to become harder and harder, and then eventually impossible to hear these words on a wide scale like you are now. And what's that going to lead to? Verse 12, and they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east. They shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord Yahweh, and shall not find it. See, because they're going to be desperate. Why are they going to be seeking the words then? Because that's when people are going to have questions. When society completely crumbles and all these things we've warned them about start to come upon them, they're going to seek help. They're going to seek answers. But as it says, they shall not find it. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak, Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.